Who are you?
Personalities are like a box of chocolate. You never know what you're going to get.
Oh my gosh, you're such a D. Well, wait, that's not what I meant. Well, that's kind of what I meant.
The overuse of any strength can easily turn into weakness.
Much better.
Welcome to the Epoch Podcast, your weekly dose of mental foreplay. I'm Matt.
I'm Jen.
I'm Austin.
I'm Joni.
Christina.
I'm David.
And this week we're talking about some personality profiles or some quizzes, tests, I don't know, things that help you know thyself. And also, they help you relate to other people. If you can kind of put them in put them in a box. I don't know. We don't want to put people in boxes, but I guess.
We are putting them in 4 boxes today.
Yeah, I was going to kind of draw some kind of
boxes.
like Civil War kind of an analogy there where you want to put people in boxes, but that's pretty grim. No, so it just helps you relate to other people.
Definitely.
So, I don't know. Anybody want to elaborate on that?
Well, Joni, I want to know why Joni likes putting people in boxes. Does it feel more safe and comfortable?
Bodies.
Because we are, just as humans, we like to be part of a group. We like to know what our group is, what we believe. We like to know what the other group is and what they believe and put them in a box. So I think just as humans, we gravitate towards labeling ourselves. Mm-hmm. And there's this trend towards getting rid of labels. And then there's also a trend of over-labeling. And I think there's a healthy way to do it of just understanding yourself, understanding who you are, and understanding who other people are that can help you relate to life and get more out of it.
I don't think there's really any true human group. There's nobody who doesn't either overtly or covertly like being part of a group. I think it's kind of that, like, no, don't label me, man. I'm one of those 60 million people who stepped out into individuality with 60 million of my closest friends back in the 60s, called hippies. We were not labeled. We were totally ourselves. Now we do the same thing with people leaving church. People, everyone is looking for a family to belong to, mm-hmm. even if that family is the family of no family. Come on. It's and there are definitely personalities that like that more than others. Mm-hmm. I'd say as we'll get into different personality profile groupings, the eyes in the room are the least likely to enjoy being labeled, but others who, Joni spoke up. She's a CS, and so
I like labels.
They like labels. They like knowing where other people stand. So it's all good.
Yeah, so this week's theme, we took 3 tests. They all have kind of 4 outputs to them. We took the DISC profile. So if you heard CS, that's kind of where that comes from. We took an animal test. I don't know if there's a specific name for that. Is it your spirit animal?
Things like the Dewey something.
Yeah. And then we took Personality Plus, which kind of outputs into the Greek temperaments. So let's go ahead and kick it off with DISC. Let's talk about DISC.
Is that a cue to me?
Yes.
You're the DISC master.
Yeah, right. So I think that's probably cue to me because I'm with the New Age Christian podcast. I am currently doing a series on the path to enlightenment, and I started out with 4 episodes on the different personality types inside the DISC personality profile. So there's so many different personality profile testing things. I think, Joni, you found something that listed we were just looking at personality tests that group people into 4 groups. Just
groups of 4, and there have to be 40 of them. You
right.
can go by color, you can go by all these different characteristics, and it pretty much kind of narrows you down into the same 4 groups. But the different tests are helpful because you get different perspectives, and just being a C, I like more information. So
right. So And then you have so we did an episode on lemon leadership. So that groups people into 5, right? Lemon, luminaries, entrepreneurs, managers, organizers, and networkers. And then, so I found a test like today called the Big 5, and that's like the Big 5 personality type or emotions or whatever. So there's personality type, tests that group people into 5s, and then there's personality tests that group people into 9s and 12s, and it's the 12 archetypes by Carl Jung, and we've our group has done a lot of that with our marketing archetypes and stuff like that. So we're doing a series on this, aren't we? Kind of,
That's
We'll
the
see
word.
how this
That
goes.
was the
If this crashes and burns, maybe not.
So it's focusing in on DISC specifically. It is, to me, it's the one I'm most familiar with. I did grow up with a mom who studied Personality Plus, which is, I know, Matt, you're more familiar with that as well. But there are different personality testing assessments that group people into 4 categories. And DISC, Personality Plus, and that animal one, I looked it up. It's Smalley. It's a Smalley Animal Personality Quiz. They group them into 4s, and with DISC, it's an acronym for dominant, influencers, steadfast, and conscientious. So most of these tests, you'll find them kind of grouped into a circle or a square, where you have certain characteristics above the circle on the top half of the circle, or certain characteristics on the bottom half of the circle, certain characteristics on the left side of the circle, certain characteristics on the right side. And on top of that, you also have the fact that most people are a combination of 2 or more. When you take these tests, you'll find that you don't typically just fit into one category and none of the others. You usually find 1 or 2 categories that you are primary in, and then some people are more balanced than others. When I take these tests, for me, the S, or if you were going with these 3 tests, the golden retriever and the phlegmatic, the phlegmatic, they're almost non-existent for me. When I was a kid, I was very phlegmatic, which is interesting. So there's, personalities are not meant to be boxes. I'm sorry, man. I'm just saying.
They look like squares on my page, so you could say they're not boxes, but they have 4 corners and they have equal distant sides. So,
well, I've found in my years of talking about this stuff that it can be one of those things that people, they take these tests and they find out what they are, who they are, how they are, and they get some really great insights, and they go, wow, this is really great. And a lot of people, these personalities do a good job of kind of puffing you up a little bit. They say, hey, you're really good at this, and you're awesome at that, and you're really good at this, and then you could work on this and this and this. And people finish these tests, and they get their assessment back, and they're like, I'm awesome. I love myself. Well, there's a reason you love yourself, because that's your personality. And you've chosen to, certain ways to operate for a reason. So, of course, I would hope you like yourself. But it's also an opportunity for people to kind of become stuck in their ways. And they become a bit of a butthole because they just, well, that's just who I am. You need to deal with that. That's my personality.
I hate that.
Right?
I'm just a jerk. It's who I am. Well, you do have an option here.
Right. Maybe you could mature. Maybe you could stretch. Maybe you could be a little bit more of this type of personality in this moment. So that's where, yes, it is about knowing yourself and knowing the people around you. And so in some ways you are putting some boxes around and some labels. But at the same time, it's not about limiting yourself to those labels and to those boxes and just becoming a jerk by basing yourself permission to not mature, or giving yourself permission to totally prejudge others. Oh, well, my little hook at the beginning was, oh my gosh, you're such a D, which is a dominant. And obviously there's a connotation in there about another insult about being such a D that a lot of people are aware of. Dominants can be very domineering. They can be very difficult to work with. They're dominant. And so a lot of times that can be their persona, is that they are such a dick. But at the same time, they're not always. If you have a mature D, they can be such an asset, and they can be a really, really great value to the world and to a team and everything like that. So it isn't about putting people in boxes. And so my hook was a bit tongue-in-cheek because for years I boxed D's in to being very difficult and people I wasn't, I didn't get along with easily. And I have learned to value everybody. And so it's not about boxing yourself or boxing others, but it is about finding the different quadrants or finding the different values in the quadrants. And those quadrants, I guess we're going to probably talk about how they all kind of interplay together. And I know one of the things we talked about, Matt, in the beginning was kind of like, why are we even talking about this? I'm just curious as to what, anyone else on this recording, why do you have you guys found this stuff valuable? Have you found it useful? And I know I have, and therefore for me the why is pretty clear, but I would like to hear some of your guys' stuff.
Yeah, I've always been very interested in personalities and how people tick and what motivations people have and that kind of thing. So for me, it's just kind of a fun topic and interesting, and I wasn't sure really what direction we were going to go with it exactly, but I'm always interested in the topic in general.
Right on. I like how it allows you to anticipate your interactions a little bit more. Again, you're not, if you put somebody in a box, then you're not doing it right. But if you just use it as clues to how, if I speak, gosh, I'm trying to think of a good way to generalize this. If I speak in a certain way to a certain type, is it going to register with them, or are they going to register more if I go to a different intangible? I don't know. That was about the worst way to put that. My wife agrees. No, it's very bad. It's very bad indeed.
I don't know. I think I go back and forth on it because I hate being put in a box. But then when I'm trying to communicate, I'm like, oh, well, I pull up those tools and I know that my personality needs this. And so I'll say it and I'll even reference it. But Joni, don't you label me. So that's, once I took the DISC profile, and I'm one of those weirdos, like my answers were literally like, you're all of them, you need to do more so we can figure you out more. And so maybe that's the part of the reason why I struggle with personalities tests, because I usually come so close to being across the board even. And then I think about one of my life goals is to be balanced. And so knowing that in the past I haven't had balanced tests, but now that I've been focusing on being balanced, I have more balanced answers. I thought that was kind of an interesting reflection on my own personal walk.
I don't know. I think that as I went through these tests again, I had anticipations for how I was going to finish out, because outside of the small animal test, I hadn't taken any of them.
You had?
I had. My God. I will talk today. I will do a good job talking. So I'd taken the DISC, I'd taken personality profile or personality plus, and I had expectations. With the DISC, same exact thing as before. I think the previous time I took it, I was called a high I. This time I'm a strong I. I think it's just different administrators have a different name for it. On the personality plus one, the one that's really not supposed to change, I changed dramatically, which I thought was really interesting. Although the previous time that I took it, I realized that I'll call it a rebirth has taken place since the previous time I took this. And as such, I went from being this person that was frustrated like Jen was, and constantly having this in the middleness, to very defined, fitting in, squarely in a couple categories. So that was very, that's useful information for me.
Right. Well, and I think part of it is, even Austin mentioned, when I was a child, I was this, and now I'm this. There's this development of, our personalities and our traits. And so when you are a child, you will exhibit something else. And then as you mature and go through your adolescent years and young adults, you'll be something else. And then a lot of people talk about midlife crisis. That's your personality changing and you developing and growing. And so you aren't really supposed to I'm going to be, the same thing my entire life. Well, you're kind of doing it wrong if that's how you're doing it. Because you just, physiologically you change with your hormones and stuff, and then your beliefs and whatnot. And so changing is good.
Change is good. That's deep.
I would say, though, that it depends on the personality. right? Some personalities hate change because change implies, so this is going to the disc I'm most familiar with. So your high conscientious individuals, their drivers is being, one of their main drivers is being right. And so change would imply that somewhere along the way they were wrong, right? And so it's kind of the slowest people in the disc profile are C's because they're so data driven and they're so deliberate. So change is very, very, very perfectionist driven. And if I'm going to change, it needs to be for a whole lot of reasons. And unfortunately, what that often means is I was wrong previously. And so, but then you get like the opposite end of that is your eyes, which are like, I'll change on a dime. Like, let's do something different. Let's do something different. Let's just, and they don't care at all. They love change. And so change is good and different personalities react differently to it. And just knowing that about the people in your life, about the people at your work, about yourself, that, there's people on this call that have embraced change because we've seen what it's done in our lives. But there are people, and honestly, there's probably not a lot of people in our audience who enjoy being stuck in their ways, right? The Epoch Podcast, talking about new ideas and stretching into the new age of being human. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably adapted to change. You might even enjoy it. However, you might have people in your life who think you're crazy as hell, right? And they might not be fans of all the change that you engage with in your life. And it may not be because they're stuck in their ways and they're crotchety and everything. That may just be their personality, that their personality has a difficult time with rapid change, and you may just love it. And so if you know that, you can have some grace and you can be mature instead of putting yourself in a box and putting them in a box and being a dick. So
You mean a D. You mean a D.
Oh, sorry. A D.
Well, I think it's funny that I think it was the second to last time that your sister came to visit.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, you guys have just changed so much. Like, I don't really know what to do with that. Like,
Yeah, well, and part of it, I wonder when we're talking about our personalities. For me personally, it's very spirit driven, and when you pull in that supernatural in the spirit piece, I think about that scripture where, and I'm going to butcher it. Sorry, but the spirit flows like the wind and the wave, and it just tosses around, and people think you're kind of crazy because you don't have a straight line, because it's really you're being driven by the spirit. And I think that's, at least for my sister, she's seeing this outward of like, you guys have changed so much, because it's true. It's like, well, sometimes I have this plan, but then Spirit's like, let's do this instead. And I'm like, all right. And I think in the past, I'd be like, no, I have my plan. I have my 3-step process, and here's my action plan. You need to submit, a change of request, Spirit, and then we'll get to you. But as I mature and grow, I realize it's more fun when you are led by the Spirit. So curious how you guys feel about that.
well, I mean, we didn't talk about this pre-show, but maybe a little audible here. Maybe if we go through and just kind of like raise our hand for what we are, we can let those people talk about that personality trait or that box, not box.
That's a pretty good idea.
Mm-hmm.
So any D's in the house?
Not
No,
according to my test, but I know everybody thinks I am.
I'm so curious now. Consider my interest piqued.
Okay, so I'm not. The other 2 times that I took the test, I was actually getting ID, which to me is weird. I don't really necessarily see that. But then the last time I took the test, I was a DISC or C. Yeah, DISC. All of them, like Jen. So I don't know, but that little the little chart thing that came out with it is really helpful, I think, because it shows your motivations, and then it shows your behavior and how those are different. And so in my behavior, it shows that my D is a little bit higher than the other ones, but it's pretty balanced overall. But then in my motivations, it's a little different. So I don't know. I think that's a really interesting part of the test, is showing how and it even said that, like, this is what goes on in your head versus this is how you express things. And that's interesting to me, really interesting.
Right on.
Because one of the little questions that it had, it said, and I don't know if this was the disc or if this was one of the other things, but it said something about everybody just chill or something like that. And I was like, that is totally what would be in my head, but I would never say that.
Christine, I have a question. Because there's two different, there's the free version of disc and the paid one. Did you do the free or the paid?
I was definitely the free one.
Okay.
Did you pay for something?
No.
Okay.
No, I was just curious because I was like, how did you get all this information? Because I when I got my standard Your Everything, you need to do some more tests. So I didn't, and so I'm like, how did you get all of that?
So it was there was a little generate a report PDF thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you have like an account there, and then it'll give you a little readout of the
helpful tip for our listeners. Make an account. Get the readout.
Check it.
Right on. So then we have any eyes in the house? Just me?
Well,
Your secondary eye.
are you talking primary or secondary?
I mean, here, whatever, however it floats.
Well, that's an
That's
important
coming from an eye.
distinction for our listeners.
Oh, whatever.
So, for the four of the listeners, most people have a primary and a secondary.
Right.
Everyone has a primary. Most people have a secondary. Some people tend to have either they're a little bit even all the way across, like Jen has talked about, or some are just really dominant in one, and then the other three are almost equal. But by and large, you could have your 1 and your 2, and then 3 and 4 are pretty obvious. So that's why I was just asking.
You do you, sir. So that's your secondary? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I'll put a / in it. Yeah.
By my detailed explanation, you probably guessed that my C is primary. But it was detailed and lengthy, and I used a lot of words. So you can tell that my I is secondary.
So before we jump shark, we got any S's?
Primary S's? I don't think so.
So then any C's.
David, what's your primary? I would have thought your
My primary is B, and my secondary is
What letters did you just say?
Yeah, let's say
CD.
CD.
Like compact disc.
But it's kind of funny because in the motivation part, the C is higher than the D, but in the acting, the D is higher than the C, or in the external or whatever you call it.
Oh, you have 0
I have no
I in your behaviors, it looks like. But that doesn't make sense because one of your other
external.
things, your external behaviors, but one of your other tests, you came out as an I. So
I know. I was
Otter.
thinking about it. I was like, that sounds kind of weird.
all of these tests did not jive quite well for us.
But
Mine line up almost perfectly.
Really?
But see here, like in the animal test, they were all within.
No,
The
not
beaver is within 2 of the lion, and the
that. Okay.
lion is within 2 of the otter. So, whatever.
So you could have made some slight adjustments on those, and it would have changed. That's probably the thing.
All right.
Depending on how you feel about yourself in the day.
We'll get to all that. Let's nail down though these categories. So Jen has a fun printout here.
That's for personality profile or plus.
That one is.
Okay, sure. This came from the same PDF, so I don't think they're separate.
Thank you, Mom.
I'm sorry. It's confusing because they use the same colors in the same format, but this is from
That's true.
No, you're
Personality
right.
Plus.
You're right.
Mhm.
So
Because I
I'm
printed stuff out.
just going to erase everything. This podcast isn't going to exist.
Such a perfect.
Well, I had a transition, but I have no idea what to do, so I'm definitely going to have to delete this part out. But what the fuck are we going to do next?
Well, she had a
You wanted to
thing
go
to
through-
look at. Why
You
can't you
wanted to
look
go
at it?
through who's as far as disc, who everyone is.
We just.
Didn't
Like
we
what?
just?
Oh, sorry. You didn't get to see.
Yeah, did.
Yeah, you left Austin out.
I went to C. I've got 2 C's in here.
Okay.
Tracy, Jen, what was your highest? Did you have?
She couldn't tell because she didn't do that little report thingy.
I've got her and Tina as the alls.
Mine just said level, but then if you look at the little report, you can kind of see different things.
Hold this over.
So David and Austin and I are all C's.
Wow,
Whoa.
that's kind of crazy.
So I'm a
You're
C. You're a CI, Austin?
And I'm
What
a
are
CS.
Okay, so you each have your own flavor.
That's funny.
I don't think we've actually talked about what all the letters actually stand for. And D, we talked about the dominant and a little bit about the I's, the influencers. The C actually stands for conscientious, and we've talked about them being the perfectionists, the analytical ones, the ones that need information, and the researchers. And then the S is the steadfast, which they are the people persons. They're the ones that care about people and supportive and dependable and easygoing and so
And loyal and
yeah.
the dominants, their name is exactly what they sound like as far as leaders, take charge, and the eyes, life of the party, Tigger, kind of, want to have fun, they're the ones that, come in the room and yell 20 people across, "Hey, how you doing?" And then they wonder why everyone's looking at them. So.
Well, let's move it on then to Personality Plus, because I've got it right here in front of me. So Personality Plus is based on the Greek fluids. There's a Hippocrates thing. And so we've got the choleric, which I think kind of lines up with our D's in the disc. We've got the sanguines, which I think kind of lines up with the I's.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got melancholies, which I think line up with the C's. And so I probably should have said phlegmatics before that, which line up with the S's. But so Personality Plus is just designed to help you relate with people that are in your lives. Whereas I think DISC is maybe more geared towards your work life. Somebody can correct me on that one if I'm wrong. But yeah, so I think, I don't know, this is supposed to be something, your temperament, something that you're kind of like born with, and you can kind of, hypothetically, you should be able to tell when somebody's like 5 years old or not, where they're going to fall into these things for the rest of their lives. But like I said earlier, I've radically changed in these. And so I kind of noticed that it was after what I would call a rebirth. What did you guys notice?
Well, I think that's interesting that you bring up what you're born with. That was one of the things I looked at, because they use the words, temperament and character and personality and all these things. So I kind of looked up the difference between those. And a lot of them talked about temperament being something that you're born with, something that you could see in babies as soon as they're born. They have distinct personalities, yet they haven't built any beliefs. They don't have any experience, but they have defining characteristics, so that they would call that a temperament. They've even found that twins generally have the same temperament because they have the same genes. So that being something that you're actually born with. Then on top of that would be character, and that has something that's characteristics that you learn. I wrote down that that's shaped by experiences and interactions with other people. And then on top of that, you have your personality, which is your character plus your behavior. So personality tests, I could definitely see how your personality changes over the years, because your behaviors change, your experiences change. So if people are looking up other tests, the difference between temperament and personality could be really big. And that's one of the reasons why you might see differences in personality tests.
That's really interesting and I feel like that's a really helpful distinction there, because you definitely do see very strong temperament in kids, generally speaking. And yeah, I guess I never really thought about defining it that way, but that makes a lot of sense to me.
Right on. So cholerics, I'm just going to go kind of work through this chart that Jen has pulled up. That their basic desire is to have control. They've got emotional needs that include loyalty, sense of control, appreciation, credit for work, and they control oftentimes by anger. when things kind of get out of their control, they default to anger, and that's to kind of dovetail on that. I think one of the cool things that Personality Plus goes through is they say that your weaknesses are essentially your strengths taken too far. And so when you take this test, you go through a bunch of positive traits and then or strengths, and then you answer you kind of identify your weaknesses. And that was kind of fun taking that part of the test, because I had to choose one of the 4 options. Which of these is my weaknesses? I don't know. It didn't feel.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't. And I think the other piece to note is that the 4 words have different meanings, maybe necessarily in having the book with like their definitions helps. So there's that to keep in mind too when you're doing it.
Oh, certainly. Yeah. The words that are used in the quiz for Personality Plus, I like when I sent out I took snapshots of the book for people, because the words they use and the definitions they use are not what I would consider common at all. But moving on to sanguine, the basic desire is to have fun. Their emotional needs include attention, affection, approval, acceptance, and they control by charm. So going like the eyes, they're influencers, and they thrive on being the life of the party. Peaceful phlegmatics. Their basic desire is to have peace. So they want peace and quiet. They want a feeling of worth. They want a lack of stress. They want respect. And procrastination is the dirty thing that gets them. And then lastly, melancholies have that basic desire to be perfect. And they need sensitivity. They need support. They need space. They need silence. And then they control people with their mood. So...
It's so funny how everybody, I think, can probably think of, they can pinpoint people in their lives that are high on some of these things, because some people are a lot more even keel, but I can pinpoint specific people on some of those that are way high in the different personalities. Whereas then there's some people that you really, you'd have to think about it for a while, or have them take the test to really understand where they're coming from.
So maybe go around the circle again on this one. Who chimed in with a primary or secondary choleric?
I'm a choleric.
What were these are my numbers. I can't remember what was what. What were the first 2? Well,
I can't help you with that because I haven't seen it, so I would have to sit there reading it to understand what's going on there. Sorry.
Womp womp.
Let me look at your notes that you gave me.
What?
Oh no.
Well, like on the PDF, the numbers, the 4 totals.
Yeah.
What did they stand for?
Sanguine.
So yeah, from left to right. Sanguine.
Okay, you're phlegmatic melancholy, dear.
Okay.
Sanguine, choleric, melancholy, and phlegmatic.
According
so I'm
to
not
this.
choleric at all. According to this. Oh, actually.
Okay. So
Wait a minute. Your
Sorry.
primary was phlegmatic, David?
On this
I think
test,
so.
see, that's what I'm saying. His is.
See? I knew it.
That makes more sense to me.
Uh-huh.
You seem like more of an SC than a CS with disc, so a phlegmatic melancholy.
But it's, I don't know. I have so many relationships, so I won't start.
The benefit of taking multiple tests is like one test, they might just use words like this one, and you just have to pick words that describe you. Or another one might ask you questions and things that you relate to. So taking different ones is helpful because you can kind of get a better picture. And some days, you might be feeling more optimistic than other days. So I don't think it's a bad thing that David had mixed things on his test, because I think that's the benefit of taking multiple tests.
Said the C.
Right. He wants information. I'm a melancholy phlegmatic.
And the D's are like, half the test is a waste of time. The full test? 4 tests? Fuck you, I'm out.
All right. So I'm gonna jam through this real quick, and we're gonna get a bunch of these. All right. So if your primary or your secondary was choleric, raise your hand. 1, 2. If your primary or secondary was sanguine, raise your hand. 1, Murder this pen. All right. If your primary, secondary were phlegmatic, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3.
Did you remember that this is an audio podcast?
I'm counting out loud if you hear me.
Choleric was Matt and Christina. Sanguine was Matt and Austin.
Uh-huh.
What was the last one we did?
Phlegmatic.
Was Jen, Joni, and
David.
Okay.
And say your name if your primary or secondary is melancholy.
I'm Jen.
Joni.
But it's like half of my cleric, so.
Okay. 3,
What are you doing with these notes, Matt? I'm curious.
What was your primary, Christina?
My primary was cleric,
Okay.
and then melancholy.
I knew
You? Such a surprise.
No.
Yeah, my melancholy and phlegmatic are 2 apart, but they're like way down. And then my sanguine is like a 3. It's so annoying to me because I want to be more fun, but it just doesn't work for me. I thought it was funny too because Matt and Austin are the ones that are always saying funny things, and they're the sanguines.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I would like to be funny, but I'm just not very funny. Not in these things. Anyway.
This is hilarious stuff.
It's interesting, I think, that you talk about wanting to be something. I know when we first took this test, Jen and I, it was in a church that was trying to help people work better in group dynamics. And so it was trying to help people identify as choleric. And a lot of people were really wanting to be choleric. And that was something that I thought I wanted too.
That's because the pastor was cleric.
That's great. Great point. Great point. I constantly kind of tested out as a phlegmatic sanguine, and I was like, all right, I guess I just don't give a crap. Like, I like telling jokes and chilling. All right, we're good. But since then, I almost feel like I've put that hat down, like that desire to be choleric is gone, and it's like my dominant trait now. And I think about the things that I do for, like coaching, some of my primary things now, and I'm constantly telling people what to do. But I'm also, when it came to softball, I was identified as the quote unquote fun coach. So,
see, and I think it like again, it totally depends on what kind of scenario you're in, because the reason that I want to be, that I feel like, I long to not have responsibility and just to be able to chill. Because to me, I'm thinking like, well, it's so nice for the sanguines because everyone's like, oh, it's okay. They're just whatever, otters, whatever. They can, that's just how they are. It's fun. They're fun. So they're excused if they're like irresponsible or something, you know? And so it feels like, to me, it's like, I don't want to be the bad guy. I don't want to be the responsible one. But it's like I feel like I get forced into that corner sometimes. And so it's the same kind of thing as with like in a marriage where you feel like, oh, I don't want to be my husband's mom type of thing that some people deal with. And I think, it's the whole thing of it comes down to kind of what scenario you're put into as to what comes out or what is able to come out.
I think that ties back to my hook where I said personalities are like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And I think the more self-aware you become and the more knowledgeable you become on these topics, the more you're able to identify in others and meet their needs. And so as we talk about this and we develop ourselves, we are becoming the leaders in that. And you notice that and you adjust accordingly because you're trying to make things easier for others.
And I love that you say like you don't want to be the serious one, but here, take this. As choleric, your strengths are you're decisive. You work well under pressure. You're production oriented. You're a great leader. It just so happens though that your weaknesses might be that you're too opinionated. You're a workaholic. You're overly intense, and you're insensitive.
But I like having opinions, and I like when other people have opinions. I find it interesting. So, I mean, like, I agree. It's definitely something that can be a weakness, but I think it's always kind of perspective. And again, like you're saying, like temperancing the things, balancing the things. I don't know.
Sure. Well, you can still, I mean, this identifies, people's strengths, weaknesses, and allows us to honor them where they're at. And so we can honor the sanguine who's, a people person who's got humor, creative and colorful, and they're a great storyteller. But, we can also recognize that they're disorganized. They talk too much. They are easily distracted, and they're often late. We all know that guy, right? We can look at the peaceful phlegmatic and see that they're adaptable. They're good under pressure. They're a good listener. They're kind. But sometimes they're too quiet. They're a procrastinator. They're stubborn, and they avoid conflict. Whereas the perfect melancholy, they have that attention to detail that is totally needed in society. They're good at numbers. They're great at processes and systems. They're a self-starter. They have initiative. Yet sometimes they lack spontaneity. They struggle under pressure. They're hard to please, and they can't function without structure. So it takes all kinds to make this world go round. And I think it allows us to recognize strengths, weaknesses, and honor everybody where they're at.
So can I throw a total curveball into this conversation?
So go into Smalley animal test. Go ahead, dude.
Well, we can do the Smalley animal test, or the curveball is lion, ox, eagle, man.
Ooh.
Which is the four faces of the four living creatures surrounding the throne of God, too.
I want that. Go with that.
That's pretty fun.
Because when you consider that we are made in his image and likeness, and yet you consider that we are so different. I have studied personalities for a long time, and there's a reason that when you dig into any one of them and you talk about, the strengths and weaknesses that Matt was just giving us, or if you can talk about the drivers, the motivators, the lies that certain personalities believe, the things that, the control mechanisms. Matt was talking about the control mechanisms. Like, there's a reason that when you hear certain things, at one point Christina laughed, right? She was like, oh my gosh, because you can think of people in your mind that are really predictable in that sense. And because we all of humanity, 7.7 billion people can fit into a certain limited group of categorizations. If you go with the disc and you do just basic math, 4 times 4, there's 16 possible combinations of what is your primary, secondary, tertiary, what's the fourth-iary, but quadriary?
Tertiary?
Quaternary?
Quadrupedic?
Point being, is that there's only 16 combinations, and so if you went with disc and you said this is equivalent to the lion, ox, eagle, man of God himself, like there's 16 basic variations of how humanity can kind of balance out the fullness of who they are. That's interesting to me, that if you could just kind of master understanding 16 different variations of people that you would come across, how much influence, how much ability to meet people where they're at, how much ability to be able to adjust your behavior, let's go here to get what you want, and to manipulate situations, like how you could actually be a better salesperson or a better pastor or a better friend, because you can understand, I know exactly what you need right now, and I know how to stretch my personality a bit. This may not be normal for me, but I know you need this, so I'm strong enough, mature enough, aware enough, learned enough to be able to meet you where you're at. You become a very powerful, very, very powerful person, regardless of your personality. And so I think there is a misconception that certain personality traits are weaker than others, and that's just bullcrap. It's immaturity is weaker than maturity. And it is, regardless of your personality, if you can mature in it, you can rule the world. And you can absolutely change the world for the better. And I think there is a component to these quadrants kind of being for me, and we're going to do an episode on Enneagram, I'm sure, and we still have Myers-Briggs to talk about and everything like that. So there's other assessments out there with more categories and more variations. But for me, this kind of, I've settled into the disc specifically in the quadrants, because it does tend to model Scripture in my mind as kind of the 4 personalities of God and the 4 components of who God is, and we are made in his image and likeness. So I've dug into it so that I can understand people and the four faces of God, if you will, that I'm seeing in my fellow humans, and the ability to then meet them where they're at and stretch myself. And I'm learning more in these last few years about how to change who I am for the greater good, and how to temper certain things in myself, how to elevate other things, how to stretch that comfort zone of being direct or being quiet or whatever. Like, there's lots of different variations of how this can challenge somebody, but it very much does tie into me to the fact that we're all made in His image and likeness, and it's worth knowing those who are different than you, and it's worth honoring them, because we are all one. And kumbaya, I could just keep going for a while, but I'll just leave it there.
So how do you equate each of those lion, ox, eagle, man specifically to like the lion, otter, beaver, DISC, or just the study that there's 4 different faces of God?
Yeah, when you throw in the constellations, so Leo, Taurus, and then before Scorpio, I can never remember the name of the constellation before it was changed to Scorpio. That would be the eagle, and then man is Aquarius, right? And so then you have earth, wind, fire, water, and you have the 4 elements, the 4 directions. So there's way more to it than just, oh, what a coincidence, there's the disc. But I do think it does, obviously lion, Leo, dominant. To me, the ox is that the burden bearer is the melancholy. The eagle is the influencer, and to me, the steadfast is the man.
Gotcha. Thanks.
That was good. It's really good. And Tina, you're not alone in envying, another box or another category. I know I've often enjoyed Austin's ability to not just teach point for point for point. I was like, dude, it's so organized, and he can just stop, trail off, and then come right back to where he was. Whereas, like, if you saw my desk, and it feels like my desk reflects my brain, like, just it's there. Like, what was I talking about? Let's just start back at the beginning. I don't know. Anybody else have anything on personality profile before we move it on? Then let's talk about our animals. Joni, didn't you bring this one up or some?
I did. This was the one that I kind of grew up with at church. Lion being your D's, your dominance. Otters being your yes, sorry, I was looking at a picture of a beaver and trying to talk about an otter. That wasn't working. The otters being the eyes, the beavers being the C's, and the golden retrievers being the S's, the steadfast. And just kind of the same thing, but it was helpful to me, especially as a kid. My mom used this with kids to get a visual of, because a little kid can understand what a lion does. They're big and they're strong, and they can understand a soft golden retriever or a funny hopping around otter. So especially with kids, this was helpful for me and kind of stuck with me in understanding. I don't think I really got it as a kid, but it was at least something to talk about. My mom tried to help me understand other kids and understanding adults. And so that's why I like this one.
So she didn't push like sanguine on you. She was like, man, I'll take the easy way out and go with otter.
I think my mom was the same as me. We're both beavers, so we like the information. So we are analytical, self-disciplined, and unsociable.
And those folks on Duck Dynasty are just content blowing up your homes with dynamite.
Right.
Right.
So do we want to kind of go around? Did you get them all? Oh, you didn't get them all. Let me stop. Go. Where did you get them all?
No, yeah, she got
them. So let's go around the circle here and see who's what. Maybe your primary and a secondary again. Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So
kind of, except my both secondaries tied for me.
Me too. This is interesting. Did that happen to anybody else?
No, but my top 3 were all within 4.
Hmm.
I mean, 4 and
My
3.
top 3 were within 1.
Me too.
Wow.
Well, not
Oh,
one. but
18, 17, 17, and 3.
Can't see your phone.
I know they can't because it's there.
hmm.
But the weirdest thing for me is
Yeah,
the otter was the highest one.
Oh, that's really
but
different.
this animal, I feel like this animal one is the most open to change because you have 4 options that you can choose, and you're either like very much something, not at all something, or like in between. There's 2
But
in
hold on.
betweens.
But see, the golden retriever was the phlegmatic,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
That was by far the lowest. That was
See,
like
something's
that was,
wrong with
like,
this.
way low.
Something is wrong. I don't know.
Well, I think that I think that's the point of doing these is that they correlate somewhat, but they also have their own strengths.
Well, I'm happy to report that my otter was much higher on this one.
Ooh, exciting, exciting.
Oh, good.
So I
It is
can
high
be
as
fun,
mine.
I guess, sometimes.
Well, some of us are primary otters, so you,
My otter,
Got otter jealousy over there.
yeah, otter.
It was what?
32.
32?
Yeah.
Oh, I beat you by 5.
Wow, you're so
so maybe
5
just
more otters than you.
so. Just go around a circle and say what your primary was. So I was an otter.
I'm a lion.
I'm a lion.
I'm a beaver.
I'm a lion. That's why I said "rawr" in the hook.
Your primary was a lion?
Yeah. But
My
it's-
primary was an otter, and I don't know how otters, what noise they make.
It's cheap. I think they kind of chirp.
I mean, like, on a fun note, 25 years ago, I was hiking on Isle Royal, which is a huge island in Lake Superior. I'd been out there for about a week, and I went into a harbor, and I noticed a couple otters swimming around. So I was like, "Let's do this." And I walked out, and there's about, I don't know, like 2 feet of water maybe, and for like an hour, I had otters swimming between my legs and nibbling on my toes, and the otters and I were one. It was
the
good,
human otter with the animal otters.
right?
Did you know otters hold their hands while they sleep so they don't drift apart?
Oh, that's
Oh,
cute.
adorable.
They play with rocks. Did you know that? They actually like juggle rocks, and scientists haven't figured out why they do it. They just do it for fun.
That's so funny.
Hence, they're playful in this test.
They
Matt
are.
juggles his rocks all the time for fun.
That's what she said.
Not today. Yeah.
Gracious.
Well, they're also excitable and love to yak, yak, yak. They're great at motivating others and need to be, I don't know, they like to have a voice on major decisions. They have an outgoing nature that makes them great networkers, and they usually know people who know people. They're encouraging, and unless under pressure, when they tend to use their verbal skills to attack. However, their strong defense overshadows problems in a relationship and results in further problems. Otters must learn to deepen relationships, be serious during serious times, and respect real deadlines. I know probably, yeah, I see Tina laughing at me right now.
Deadline.
Just before this, she's like, hey, could you go ahead and upload that thing? That probably should have been uploaded a couple weeks ago.
The deadline you missed 3 weeks ago.
Funny.
Right.
So I had that for otters. Maybe you guys, maybe the lions could read their primary thing if they remember what it was.
I thought
Or
I saved mine
beavers.
to my
I got mine
email
up
and
here.
it's not there. I
Lions
don't
are
have it.
leaders. They are usually the bosses at work, or they think they are.
Mm-hmm.
They're decisive, bottom line folks who are not watchers or listeners. They love to solve problems. Unfortunately, if they don't learn to tone down their aggressiveness, their natural dominating traits can cause problems for others. Areas of growth, lions need to learn that meaningful communication takes time. They need to slow down to involve others in decisions.
Wow, Matt, you are making so many little faces at Jen over there.
She's a lion. I don't know.
Rar, Tina, rar.
Yeah.
I
That's
have the
me.
beaver one too.
Are you a beaver as your secondary?
Yeah, well, beaver and otter were tied, so I just like the water.
Yeah, that's funny.
Are you a water sign?
No.
Mm.
No. No.
Hmm?
Fire.
I'm gonna Google that right now.
Hmm.
Google that.
No, actually, I'm not fire. What is Scorpio?
Are they
No,
necessarily
is it
related?
like water, earth, fire?
Yes.
Those equate.
Because water, earth, fire,
Water, fire,
and air
heart.
are energies, I would say.
Well, they're also.
It's oftenly mistaken as a water sign, but mistaken as a fire sign, but it's a water sign. Congratulations, sir.
What?
Maybe that's because it was water before it was Scorpio.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it is because Aquarius is mistaken as a water sign. It's actually an air sign.
What?
Mm.
The more you know. Carry on with your beaver talk.
Well, now I'm curious about these things.
All right.
Right. Well, yeah, we didn't even get into
Another
constellation.
podcast.
We will. It's our series, guys.
Yep.
Stay tuned.
So,
All
Beaver, take control. Tell us about yourself.
The beavers, our strengths are beavers have a strong need to do things right and by the book. In fact, they are the kind of people who read instruction manuals. I do sometimes read instruction manuals. They're great at providing quality control in office and will survive in situations that demand accuracy, such as accounting and engineering. Because rules and consistency and high standards are so important to beavers, they often get frustrated with a mate who doesn't share these same characteristics. Despite deep feelings for those they love, beavers must learn to communicate their softness and warmth in a way that's felt and clearly understood by others. Areas of growth, beavers need to accept that it's all right to make mistakes and that it's healthy to call for help when they're struggling.
Did we have anybody that even had a secondary of golden retriever, so we can at least talk about that? Because I didn't get the result because I didn't get the definition. 'cause I
Doesn't
didn't get the
look
result.
like it.
Well, you're hosed if you're a golden retriever. Sorry, folks.
David, you didn't have much golden retriever?
No, I had no.
His otter replaced his golden retriever, I guess.
Yes.
Flippity floppity.
Well, in general, I mean, none of us have the definition from the test, but golden retrievers are, I know from previous engagements with this test, it's about loyalty, friendship, and kind of the idea of, your dog is your best friend type of thing. You can yell at your dog, and the consistency of them being able to wag their tail when you come home. Their weaknesses or areas of growth is that they can often be used, and often they will be dishonest with their feelings because they don't want to hurt yours. And so their loyalty can actually end up being a bit manipulative because they're not being honest. So.
Oh. Good color commentary.
I just made that up.
Well, I think we've been going about an hour. I mean, want to go around the circle on this thing?
Sure.
Do it.
Personalities, temperaments. These are fun things to do. To know yourself so you can communicate and relate better with others. So we'll have the links in our description below, and entertain yourselves and have a conversation about it.
I think for me, I've done a lot of talking about how these things interplay with each other, and as far as learning how to deal with yourself and with other people. I think for me, my final note would be it does surprise me how many people have never really considered knowing themselves. If this is something if you've never taken an assessment test like this, seriously, try it out. Even the free ones, you're going to read the results and be like, how do they know me that well? Well, the answer is because there's only so many ways to be a human, right? So there's only so many variations on personality, and there's a reason you meet people who are like you, and then you meet people who drive you nuts because they're complete opposites. And there's a reason that people, certain personalities, nobody has anything bad to say about that person. And then there's this other person over here that very few people have anything good to say, right? And so it's because we all kind of have predictable behaviors. And the more you can know about those behaviors about yourself and about other people, it's only going to help you be a better human. Well, Some people can use it to manipulate. So it depends on your personality. I tend to think that it can be very helpful for becoming a better human. And if you've never done it, take some of these tests. I will say from experience that you get what you pay for. So if you take the free tests, you'll get some information, dip your toe in the water. But if you really, really want to know yourself and know the people around you, then, invest in some more expensive testing. And I've taken tests as high as $65. I've taken multiple tests that I've paid for $20, $30, $60. And the results you get, the information you get very much does reflect the price you pay.
I'd agree with that. I've taken paid tests, and you do get way more out of them. You get your money's worth, essentially. One of the other things that I just wanted to close with was the questions that each of these personalities ask when they're in a situation. So when you're having a conversation with someone, what is the question that each of these personalities need the answer to? And I found that really interesting. For D's, or the dominant personality types, it's how do we get results? So in any conversation, that's basically what they need answered. For I's, it's what is the big picture? For S's, it's how do you feel about it? And for C's, it's what are the facts? And that's helped me looking at my coworkers and looking at my boss and trying to communicate with her and trying to give her the information that she needs, because I might be giving her all these facts. She's an ID, so she doesn't really care about the facts. She just wants to know big picture and how it's going to get done. So helping me to be able to communicate and give other people what they need, I found those core questions really helpful.
I know it's not my turn. I've never heard those questions, but I'm a CI. And so anybody asks me any question, I give them the facts of the big picture.
Me too.
So it's a lot of words.
I think that's really helpful because all of this stuff can feel very overwhelming, I think. Trying to just categorize everybody and just constantly trying to figure out this and that and the other thing. But taking some of those core basic things is really helpful to be able to just, like Joni said, be able to communicate better or give people what they need. And the vast majority of people, I would say, probably are not utilizing these tools on a regular basis. And there's so much miscommunication and strife and frustration that happens because people are talking past each other. They're on different pages because of these things, because of different motivations and understandings of how life works. And so having a few of those basic things like those questions is a huge asset just in life, but also in your job, in your relationships. For me, this is something that I've been thinking about a lot more in the last several months, just in my relationship with David especially. And it's so helpful, I think, to be able to just honor people better and not view people as being different in a bad way, but just different than people can complement each other, and knowing the whys behind some of it just helps a lot, I feel like, in relationships. So recommended.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just the fact that you can say about complimenting each other, but it can also be seen if you don't understand where you're coming from, those differences or those different approaches to things can be seen more as irritations, or they're just being this way or that way. They're just being a D,
Right.
And so to me, this it's been a little bit of a journey, because I was that kind of person when I moved here to the States. I had never taken this was just a completely new field of life for me. I had never heard of these categorizations or anything of the sort. And so when I remember taking the disc and thinking, this kind of makes a lot of sense in the way that I had, reacted or been my whole life. And so it doesn't just provide a lot of information, but it also kind of helps me say, hey, I'm not so completely weird. There are other people like me. There are,
It's good.
but yeah, I guess, being happy that I do fit in a box.
That's right. Boxes are
I
good.
fit in a box. Yes. What I am curious, I was going to ask this. Are all the people in the world dispersed in, or let me phrase this properly. Is there an equal number of every people?
Or is there, like-
No. I think even Personality Plus goes out of the way to say that, like, for example, choleric is the most rare one at like 15 or 16% or something like that.
No.
I looked into that with the Myers-Briggs a little bit, which will be in another episode, but they do break it down into percentage of population, and it does vary quite a bit, actually.
Now, is it?
I think another thing worth noting in that discussion is the different variations between different countries.
Oh, yeah, probably.
Right.
I was gonna touch on that because yeah, you would find. I feel like you would find a lot of sanguine or more outgoing people in the Latin culture, and so on and so forth. But yeah, I was curious because I was kind of thinking of the whole way that our team was spread out.
Yeah,
but yeah.
that is interesting to think about.
Well, when I go to the mall, which isn't very often anymore, but when I do, one of the first things I look for is that big sign that has the map of where all the stores are. And then the first thing you got to find, though, is the "You Are Here" spot on that map. And I think these kinds of tests help you find out where you are. They help you raise that awareness of where you are and how you can relate to others. Because you can think, well, okay, I want to go to this store, but if you don't know where you are, you can't track your growth from there. Anyways, I don't know. I think the ones that we covered today are super useful. They're a little more useful than, say, like which Disney princess am I? Which isn't to say that we can't cover those ones later, Jasmine. But I think, I don't know. It's definitely it's worth the time, and I think awareness is a key to personal growth, and we're all about personal growth here. I think, Joni referenced, I think, some of the things that are in the book, Personality Plus. Do any of the other ones have books with them? I'm sure there's books written about DISC, but is there a DISC book?
I don't think so.
Okay. So we'll definitely have the link to Personality Plus on the site. And, well, we're not doing that now. Oh, yeah. Oh,
there is like a couples one.
Yeah, there is a couples one. Sorry.
Personality Plus couples.
Okay. I guess we can throw that up there too. But yeah, good show, gang. If you like what you heard, feel free to hit up our Patreon account, become a patron, and support the show. If throwing cash our way isn't your thing, or picking up the book through a link isn't your thing, please just go ahead and do the cool things like and subscribe and share all that stuff. If you find what we do valuable, it will help us keep doing it. So you find us on the social medias under Epic or at Epic Ideas, and our website is theepic.org. And this has been another conversation worth having.
To be clear, my Disney princess is Fat Thor.